Cam Thomas just pulled off the most controversial financial gamble in recent NBA memory. While most players chase the biggest paycheck possible, the 23-year-old Brooklyn Nets guard shocked executives across the league by turning down over $30 million. Instead, he signed a one-year qualifying offer worth just $6 million. This isn't just about money. It's a calculated power move that could completely reshape how restricted free agency works in the NBA forever. What makes this decision absolutely wild is that Thomas had legitimate multi-year offers sitting on the table from his own team. The Nets weren't lowballing him, they were ready to commit serious cash. But Thomas looked at those deals and said no, choosing instead to bet everything on himself for one more season. The ripple effects of this decision are already being felt throughout front offices, and by the time you finish watching this, you'll understand why Thomas might have just outsmarted every NBA executive in the building. Here's where this story gets absolutely insane. Brooklyn offered Thomas two separate deals that would have secured his financial future immediately. The first proposal was a 2-year contract worth $30 million with a team option for the second season. Think about that for a second. Guaranteed $15 million per year for a player who was making less than $2 million just 3 seasons ago. But that wasn't even their final offer. The Nets came back with an alternative deal that was even more interesting from a basketball perspective. They put a 1-year contract on the table worth $9.5 million with performance incentives that could push the total value up to $11 million. The kicker? They were willing to waive his no-trade clause completely, giving Brooklyn the flexibility to move him if needed. Most players would have jumped at either of these offers without hesitation. But Thomas saw something his agents and the front office didn't expect. He recognized that accepting either deal would lock him into Brooklyn's timeline and vision, not his own. By choosing the qualifying offer instead, he maintained complete control over his destiny. That $6 million qualifying offer comes with a full no-trade clause, meaning the Nets cannot ship him anywhere without his explicit consent. More importantly, it sets him up for unrestricted free agency next summer when the landscape could look completely different. The move becomes even more brilliant when you consider the market dynamics. Thomas isn't just betting on his own performance improving, he's betting on the entire NBA salary cap situation changing dramatically, and the early indicators suggest he might be absolutely right about what's coming next summer. What Thomas just accomplished is so rare that most fans don't even realize how unprecedented this decision actually is. Since 2017, only 4 other former first-round picks have chosen to sign their qualifying offer instead of negotiating a longer deal. We're talking about a success rate that's less than 1% among eligible players. The reason is simple. Most agents and players view the qualifying offer as financial suicide. The conventional wisdom in NBA strictles has always been to secure the guaranteed money when it's available. Injuries happen, performance dips occur, and market conditions can shift overnight. Taking a 1-year deal worth significantly less than what's being offered long-term flies in the face of everything agents typically advise. But Thomas and his representation at Octagon clearly saw something different in his specific situation. The timing of this decision makes it even more shocking. Thomas is coming off a season where he appeared in only 25 games due to hamstring injuries. This was the first time in his career that he missed significant time due to injury concerns. Most players coming off an injury-shortened season would prioritize security over potential upside. The fact that Thomas chose the riskier path while dealing with injury questions shows just how confident he is in his ability to stay healthy and perform at an elite level. What's flying under the radar is how this decision impacts the entire restricted free agent market. Thomas was the first domino to fall among the major RFA names still available, including Josh Giddey from Chicago, Jonathan Kuminga from Golden State, and Quentin Grimes from Philadelphia. His choice to sign the qualifying offer might have just given those players and their agents a completely new negotiating strategy to consider. Thomas didn't make this decision in a vacuum. His on-court production over the past 2 seasons has been absolutely elite, and the advanced metrics back up why he feels confident betting on himself. Last season, despite being limited to just 25 games, Thomas averaged 24 points, nearly 4 assists, and over 3 rebounds per game in 31 minutes of action. Those numbers alone don't tell the complete story of his impact. Here's the stat that should make every NBA executive take notice. According to advanced tracking data, Thomas was double-teamed on 18% of his offensive touches last season. That rate ranks 4th among all NBA players who recorded at least 1,000 touches, behind only Zion Williamson, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Read that list again. Thomas is being schemed against by opposing defenses at the same level as MVP candidates and generational talents. The progression in his game has been absolutely remarkable. Over his first 2 NBA seasons, Thomas averaged just 9.5 points in 17 minutes per game. But over the past 2 campaigns, those numbers jumped to nearly 23 points in over 31 minutes per contest. He's not just scoring more because he's playing more, his efficiency and shot selection have improved dramatically while taking on a much larger offensive burden. Thomas has already etched his name into Brooklyn Nets history in ways that casual fans might not realize. His 9 career 40-point games rank 4th all-time in franchise history, trailing only legends like Vince Carter, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant. For a player who was selected with the 27th pick in the 2021 draft, this level of elite scoring production was never expected. But Thomas has consistently exceeded expectations at every level, and now he's betting that trajectory will continue.
Thomas and his agents didn't just look at this summer's market conditions. They studied what's projected to happen in 2026, and what they found probably influenced this decision more than anything else. According to early salary cap projections, at least 10 teams are expected to have significant cap space next summer. That's a dramatic shift from this year's market, where Brooklyn was essentially the only team with real spending power. The salary cap is expected to jump significantly thanks to the new media rights deals that are kicking in. When you have more teams with money to spend and fewer quality players available, basic economics tells you that player salaries are going to skyrocket. Thomas is positioning himself to be one of the premier young scorers available in what could be the most lucrative free agency class in recent memory. But there's another element to this strategy that's absolutely genius. By signing the qualifying offer, Thomas maintains his bird rights with Brooklyn while also setting himself up for unrestricted status. This means the Nets can still offer him more money than any other team next summer, but he'll also have the leverage of genuine outside interest. It's the best of both worlds, maximum negotiating power with multiple suitors, while keeping the door open for Brooklyn to retain him if they're willing to pay market rate. The no-trade clause aspect cannot be overstated in terms of its importance. Thomas now has complete control over his destination for the next 12 months. If Brooklyn decides to pivot toward a different direction, or if trade opportunities arise, Thomas gets to decide whether those moves align with his career goals. That level of autonomy is typically reserved for superstar veterans, not young players still establishing themselves in the league. Thomas's decision to sign the qualifying offer has created a fascinating dynamic for the other major restricted free agents still available. Josh Giddey's situation with Chicago is particularly interesting because the Bulls have been active in trade discussions, and Giddey might now be considering whether he wants similar no-trade protection. Jonathan Kuminga's case with Golden State could follow a similar pattern, especially if he believes the Warriors' championship window is closing. The restricted free agent market had been essentially frozen because teams with cap space weren't willing to make aggressive offers that would get matched anyway. Brooklyn's unique position as the only team with significant spending power created a stalemate where players couldn't leverage outside interest effectively. Thomas just showed other RFAs that there's another path forward if they're confident in their abilities and the future market conditions. What's happening behind the scenes is that agents across the league are now re-evaluating their strategies for current and future restricted free agents. The qualifying offer out was always theoretically available, but it was considered too risky for most players to seriously consider. Thomas might have just proven that under the right circumstances, it's actually the smartest financial and career decision available. The psychological impact on front offices shouldn't be underestimated either. General managers who thought they could control restricted free agency timelines by limiting external competition now realize that players have more leverage than previously understood. This could lead to more aggressive initial offers to avoid players following Thomas's playbook in future summers. Brooklyn's front office is now in a fascinating position that they probably didn't expect to be navigating. They have one of the league's most promising young scorers locked in for another season, but they also know he'll be evaluating their progress toward championship contention throughout the year. Thomas essentially turned this into a prove-it situation for both sides. He needs to prove he can stay healthy and maintain elite production, while Brooklyn needs to prove they can build a competitive roster around him. The Nets are clearly in a transitional phase after moving on from the Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving era. They have some interesting young pieces and flexibility to make moves, but they're not considered championship contenders entering this season. Thomas's decision puts additional pressure on the front office to be aggressive in improving the roster because they know he'll have maximum leverage to leave if the team doesn't show meaningful progress. From a basketball perspective, having Thomas locked in for another year gives Brooklyn a legitimate offensive anchor while they continue developing their young core. His ability to create offense in isolation situations and draw double teams opens up opportunities for teammates that wouldn't exist otherwise. The question becomes whether the Nets can surround him with enough complementary talent to make a playoff push that convinces him to stay long-term. Thomas just did something that could fundamentally alter how restricted free agency operates in the NBA. By choosing financial risk over security, he's betting on his talent level, and the changing market dynamics will pay off in ways that accepting Brooklyn's offers never could have. This isn't just about money, it's about a young player taking complete control of his career trajectory at the most crucial juncture. The ripple effects of this decision will be felt for years to come. Other young players watching this situation unfold are seeing that there's an alternative to accepting whatever their current team offers. Agents are recalculating risk assessments for qualifying offer scenarios. Front offices are realizing they may need to be more aggressive in initial restricted free agency negotiations. But here's the most important part. Thomas has positioned himself to potentially cash in on the biggest contract of his career while maintaining complete autonomy over his destination. If he stays healthy and continues his elite scoring production, he could be looking at offers that make Brooklyn's $30 million proposal look like a discount. And if something goes wrong, he's young enough to recover and build his value back up over time. Thomas just proved that sometimes the biggest risk is actually the safest play. By betting on himself when everyone expected him to take the guaranteed money, he might have just secured both his financial future and his championship aspirations in one brilliant move. The NBA will never look at restricted free agency the same way again.